This is episode 11 of Spiritual AF with Pixie Rose, the podcast for people going on their spiritual journeys, knowing we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Today on the podcast, I have Z. Z is an alchemist, a reiki practitioner, QHHT practitioner, and host of Channels of the Galaxy on YouTube. So, welcome, Z, to Spiritual AF.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So, we could do a whole episode on exactly how we met, but long story short, we met in Egypt when we were doing our level 2 QHHT training. And since then, we've stayed in close contact. And I've just learnt so much from you on so many different topics. You have inspired me in so many ways with your positive outlook on the current global situation, being able to remain in a high vibration and help manifest the new earth, as well as the information that you and Michelle have been sharing on your YouTube channel. So I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for your friendship and for joining me today. So I'm so excited to ask you all the questions on asking questions.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And yes, that was a very short story for a long story.
Yeah. It's potentially a whole episode there.
Oh my gosh, that's how we know each other. Someday we'll have to do that episode, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. We'll build up to that one. So I'd like to begin with a bit about you and your story and your spiritual journey. So how you got to where you are now, doing the things that you're doing now.
Right. So I probably always considered myself a free spirit looking back at kind of my upbringing. I've always had that about me, and people always called me a hippie. But I was not really a spiritual person. I didn't know what to believe. I came up in a Christian school, and I really did not resonate with like what they were teaching me at all. And I'm kind of like that. My mentality and personality is to resist and to rebel. That's just my natural state. And so I did. I rebelled against that. But it didn't resonate, though. What they were teaching me didn't resonate. And I had an anxiety about death and what happens after this life. I didn't know what to believe or what to think because no one around me knew. And I didn't know where to really look for that. Well, I think it's just a series of bad relationships really kind of propelled me into a dark night of the soul, into a deep depression. And I was in that seeking, looking for kind of going to the route of substances just to feel something or to numb something. But I came across a documentary about DMT, which that blew my mind hearing what they talked about in that documentary. And they were connecting it, and they were calling it the spirit molecule, saying that molecule connects you to the spirit realm. And that was really intriguing to me. But in that spiraling down of messing with all the different kinds of substances and dealing with depression, I did come across LSD and psilocybin mushrooms. And it was in a synchronistic moment that it found me, like right when I needed to find me. And that kind of cracked me open and allowed me to experience an ego death, which I didn't know what that was at the time. And I also had basically an NDE, a near-death experience, right around that same time, which the NDE, it allowed me to kind of gracefully go through that process, having had the ego death moment on a psychedelic. And so I was able to surrender to what I kind of experienced in those psychedelic states during the NDE, and just I kind of let happen what was going to happen and just surrendered to that moment. And that really propelled my awakening. And I felt like I was a new person from that moment on. And that kind of inspired me to do some research and trying to build a context with the things I was experiencing, because I had no context for anything I was experiencing. It was just experiences. So I was just kind of in a sea and like drowning almost, just not knowing where the heck to go. I had all these wonderful and magical experiences, but no context. So that led me to finding different spiritual teachers. And, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with Ram Dass.
No.
He was the very first one. What was he? Professor at Harvard. Are you familiar with Harvard?
Yeah.
In the state?
Yeah.
So he was a professor at Harvard, and he was getting into LSD and working with LSD with psychology, and they kicked him out. And then he just kind of, in this parallel with me, he took this major detour and went to the spiritual route, and has written wonderful books. But one of the books that he wrote was Be Here Now, and it's still my favorite and closest to my heart. It's all about mindfulness practices, and just literally the title tells you, be here now. The present moment is where everything happens. And so I learned so much from him, but I still had this, I don't know, there was something missing in that. And he didn't get, like, that's the Buddhism and the spiritual teachers in that aspect, like him, Jack Kornfield, Raghu Marcus, all these like Buddhist kind of based spiritual teachers, they were leaving out a big piece of the puzzle for me, which now I know was these extra-dimensional, extraterrestrial beings that we've been connecting with, and what those actually mean. That was missing from their perspective. They didn't really touch on that, and I kept seeking beyond them. But I did learn so much from them, and helping me work with my own ego and do my own inner work, and, you know, integrating the shadow and all of that. It's wonderful. But I've kind of moved away from those teachers, and they're still there, but I have that foundation. But it led me to search on my own, and honestly, YouTube was a great tool for me, and the Gaia Network. Those two tools, I've found so much invaluable information. And it was kind of just like the stepping stone thing. So YouTube led me to Elba Weinman and Allison Coe, and their hypnosis videos they've posted on, you know, they'll post, I don't know what it was that they would have titled it, maybe like New Earth or something. Some title caught my eye, because I was not searching hypnosis. I didn't even know that was a thing, that you could enter these states, you could alter your consciousness through that. I didn't even know that. So I found Elba Weinman and was watching her videos just nonstop, just devouring all of it. And then I came across Allison Coe, and I was finding hers with the event, talking about the event and New Earth and all this stuff. And she started talking about the technique that she used. So that got me really curious. And it was, at the time, she was doing the quantum hypnosis, the QHHT technique, basically. So I was like, okay, wow, I'm going to look into this. I wonder if there's a practitioner anywhere nearby I could find real quick. Because I was like, I don't know, I got stuck in a full-time job, and I really lost sight of my spiritual journey, and all the things I was doing kind of started falling away when I got into that full-time job. It was just, you just get lost in it sometimes. And those spiritual practices were falling away, and I was losing sight of myself again. And just, I felt like I was going down the wrong path. I felt stuck. I was actually dealing with some physical issues, which I found out were because I was not moving in the direction I was supposed to be moving. And I found that out through a hypnosis session. But I did find a practitioner pretty close, actually, just a couple hours. So I planned a trip, went up there, had the session, and it blew my mind. It was more than I ever expected it to be. And it was so cool how similar it was to some of the experiences I had on a psychedelic. But in this case, there was no substance. There was nothing. It was just being guided through this journey. in a hypnotic state, which was amazing. But actually, before the hypnosis process, the interview process really intrigued me. In the interview, I was kind of getting hits intuitively of maybe this is something I should be doing, because I started asking her questions and I actually started interviewing her.
Of course you did.
Right, of course I did. Didn't even realize it. And it was like 2 hours into the session and she hadn't even asked me anything. It was like a 9-hour session. No joke. It was so long. But I was really feeling like, okay, well, and I could tell that she was feeling the same way as I'm asking her questions about her awakening and her story and how she got into all this. And it was just a piece of the puzzle that fit right into place. Like, this just feels right. I want to do this. So I asked her after the session. She actually mentioned to me, like, I think you should look into doing QHHT. I was like, well, you read my mind. I was absolutely feeling that same thing. So then I asked her how to, I don't know, follow up on that, and where do I go? How do I get certified? Where do I go? So she told me take a class, but she recommended the in-person class. So I found a class that was in Atlanta, Georgia, a couple months down the road. So I scheduled that, and I don't know, that just started everything rolling for me. I'm not going to probably, I don't know, I don't want to keep going into every...
Yeah. And I think...
I don't know how to segue from that.
Yeah, that's okay. And I think, because I did a whole episode on QHHT, and it has that sort of quality about it, like you discover it and it just opens up this whole can of worms, or this whole like other world. Yeah, like even when I've shared it on social media, I'm like, check out Dolores Cannon's YouTube channel. Like, this is a rabbit hole you want to go down. Like, it's
oh my gosh, right.
Just changes everything.
Not just the rabbit hole of Dolores Cannon, taking a class and meeting the people, because I'd always been seeking a tribe. I just felt out of place anywhere I was. I always felt out of place, and I could never find my people. And I would find a group and they would feel like my people for a little bit, and I'd find out it wasn't what I was looking for. There was something off, was something still I hadn't found my tribe yet. And when I found QHHT and had that first class and met the people in the level 1 class, those were the people I was looking for. And then level 2 happened.
Up-leveled.
And up-leveled, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, amazing. I love being, and it, everyone describes it as the QHHT family. It feels like such a beautiful family. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And I can see how you were sort of concerned on taking up all the time with your own story, because
oh my gosh,
yeah, your story is amazing, and I know parts of your story that I think would be so beneficial for people to hear. So I would love it if you kept sharing your story, on your own platform. I think it'd be so wonderful for people to hear that. I'm a massive believer in sharing your story, and I love that about QHHT is that it fully encompasses that in that interview section.
Absolutely. That's how we grow. It's how we help each other, by sharing our stories with each other, sharing our experiences. Because everyone has a different perspective of an experience.
Yeah, definitely. So you've had a couple of QHHT sessions on yourself now. What is one of the most profound experiences that you have had with a quantum healing session?
Right. So I've had 3 sessions, and it's really hard to pick one moment or one thing that happened that's profound. I mean, I've had a lot of wild non-human lifetimes, from being a bird being to water being to extra-dimensional archivist to a planet to a creator of planets. It's been all over the board. But I think just in that first session, discovering my life path or redirecting my life path, that was the most profound thing that happened. And that led me to pursue QHHT, which led me to Egypt, which just blew everything out of the water and completely rocked my world. So I think just getting to Egypt through QHHT was probably the most profound experience. I mean, it was just such a magical experience that most people wouldn't believe and don't believe half the things. I don't tell them half the things that happen because I know they won't believe them. But I know, so in Egypt, and the session, I had a QHHT session in Egypt. That was my third session. And before that, I was aware of channeling, but I'd only seen it through a YouTube, someone channeling on YouTube. And in Egypt, that was my first experience in person with multiple people channeling. And then in my session, I started channeling. And I met different spirit guides I have and channeled them and just created that bridge and that pathway. And now I'm able to connect that way on my own. And I've been developing my own channeling ability. It's still not as strong as I'd like it to be, but it's just, I think, different than I expected it to be.
Yeah, it's amazing. QHHT, there's just no boundaries. You just have no idea what to expect. Everyone's session is going to be different. And then to study it and have that opportunity to have multiple sessions as well is, very, very cool.
Highly recommend multiple sessions.
Yeah.
One is not enough. And I did find that my second and third, I was able to get into the hypnotic state easier and let my thinking mind, the monkey mind, kind of sit in the back seat a little bit easier and a little bit better each time I did it. So yes.
Yeah,
the more sessions you have, the better it will be for you.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about your YouTube channel that you host with our good friend Michelle, who we also met in Egypt. So what is the intention with the YouTube channel?
Well, I've always had this unrelenting fascination with UFOs and extraterrestrials and the ancient astronaut theory. I don't know if you're familiar with that theory.
No, that's not something
you know
I've heard of.
the History Channel show,
Yep.
Ancient Aliens?
Yes.
So that's where that theory was developed, or at least proposed to me. And I was a huge fan of that show. That kind of got me starting to think this way and looking into things and looking into, ancient Egypt and all these different sites. As I kind of went on along my awakening journey, I began to discover more about extraterrestrials, and my understanding of that keeps evolving. And I want to share that exploration with others. But through the YouTube channel, the main purpose is really to map out our galactic heritage through the cosmos and help with those energies that we're connecting with, help raise the collective vibration of humanity and create a bridge for the human collective to have open contact again. I mean, we had it in the past and it is in our future. And it's also just a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. Yes. I love your reaction when certain energies come through. I think it was Egypt that I was kind of, I've always been about the fairies. So I've been talking about fairies being real and having incarnated lives within the fairies for years now. But I think it was Egypt that I was kind of like, well, fairies are kind of like an extraterrestrial sort of being in a way. Mind-blowing statements. So let's take it a notch back, because some people listening are still, and even before Egypt, I was probably still in that questioning, aliens real? Is there life on other planets? Because obviously it's not something that is shared in the mainstream media. It's not something we're taught in schools or anything. It's just this big secret.
But that's where it starts.
Yes.
Questioning it.
So can you explain the extraterrestrial beings that you have discovered so far? Maybe just like a little overview for people that have never heard of this before.
Okay. Oh, just in general, or specifically who I'm connecting with?
Like specifically, because I guess one name that might sound familiar for people is often the Pleiades are a sort of big topic group. Like a lot of
Right.
people are talking about being connected to the Pleiades or being a Pleiades incarnate. So yeah.
Well, the thing about that is the Pleiades is enormous. I mean, there's 7 stars in that system that we're calling the Pleiades. So the amount of beings that are present there in different dimensions, it's staggering. You can't even put a number on it and what those beings look like. Because in general, I think people classify a Palladian as a really good-looking, like blonde person, and they kind of been stereotyped that way. But really, there's so many different kinds of beings that come from the Pleiades. And oddly enough, we haven't really connected with a Palladian being yet on the channel, which is interesting.
they're too spiritually mainstream. These are going a bit more alternative.
Right. Well, that's fitting. That's very fitting. Well, we have connected strongly with the Mantis Collective, and they are, what are they? An eighth to 11th dimensional range of collectives and beings that basically look like a praying mantis evolved billions of years. And they've been involved in, you want me to get into how they each are contributing?
We could probably do a whole episode on
Yeah.
like different beings and stuff, but I definitely will link in your YouTube channel so that people can go further into this. So
Right.
But even the mantis beings, the Indigenous Australians, depending on what part of Australia they communicated with the mantis beings. So even though it might sound like a bit of a strange concept to imagine that there's these, because they're giant mantis, right, like humanoid beings, is that what or they're just more like giant praying mantises?
Well, yeah, they're insectoid type being.
Yeah.
And actually there's many different native cultures that have depictions, and they talk about working with other insect beings, specifically the ant beings. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No, I haven't.
It's an inner earth race of ants, like the Hopi tribe. They talk about the ant beings. And I've even heard ancient Egypt, they were prevalent there. And they may have had a hand. I heard a channeler, what's her name? She's a very famous channeler. Something Grace, Sophie Grace. She's on the Guy Network. She has like curly red hair.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
No, I haven't come across her.
Well, she channeled about ancient Egypt, and in her channeling, and with all channelings, if it doesn't resonate, throw it away. If it resonates, then use it. But everyone's perspective is different, and everyone has an ego filter that they're channeling through. So you can't give up your own power and accept everything that a channeler is telling you. But in her channeled material, it was relating to the ant beings and them having a hand in creating the pyramids.
Wow.
Which is interesting. Yeah, so the ant beings, which we haven't connected with those guys, but that's an inner earth being. But I did want to just clarify the term extraterrestrial. It's kind of a blanket term, really. But extraterrestrial, just basically in its definition, is a being that's not of Earth origin. So we kind of lump things in as an extraterrestrial when they're really just an extra dimensional. I kind of like that better.
Right.
Extra dimensional. Because these inner Earth beings, you're calling them extraterrestrial, but they're from Earth.
You know
what I mean?
Yeah.
And like the fairies and the whole enchanted realms. So extra dimensional, I've kind of resonated more with that.
Yeah, I love that. And this is
Right.
all the things that I'm like have learned so much from you over the last, how long has it been? Like 8 or 9 months since Egypt. So it's all
Oh my
like
goodness.
yeah.
Feels like yesterday.
Yeah. But one of our first conversations in Egypt, I remember you asked me if I don't know if that was how you asked me, but you sort of opened up the conversation around if I believe that we sort of shared our universe with other beings. However it was that you worded that, I can't remember. And basically, I responded with I believe I had a belief that I had an abduction experience,
Mm.
and then you sort of spoke about like that terminology of abduction and alien. So can you expand a bit on our terminology on things?
Yes. Yes. So I kind of stopped using the term alien. I just felt this negative connotation with that term. And like I just said, I've been gravitating towards the extra dimensional. But you can call, I mean, I don't think they're not taking these things personal if you call them an alien. They're much more evolved than that. But also you could call them a galactic family member or star beings, star family, all these kind of things. But yeah, the abduction phenomenon is interesting. And there's so many layers to that. But it's kind of convoluted actually. But we did get into that in an episode with the Zetas, the Zeta Reticuli, because most abduction stories involve a Zeta being or a gray. They call them grays, the typical gray. And I don't know what happened in your abduction experience, if you remember a being involved.
Yes, there was definitely a being involved, and I believe that my conscious self sort of made that being look like something that was more acceptable for me. So it was
Right.
kind of almost like a dream state, like I went to sleep, and again, we could probably do whole episodes on these topics. So it's just kind of like an introductory topic. But it's like, yeah, I went to sleep, and I had what appeared to be a dream, but when I woke up in the morning, it felt like I had left my body, and my body itself felt different.
Hmm.
And the being that showed up in my dreamlike state actually appeared to me as David Bowie. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, all sorts of things happened in that dream. But it was the first time that I was like, oh my God. Like I woke up and I didn't feel like worried or scared or anything, but I was just like, that wasn't a dream. Like something happened there. And yeah, so
Yes, so that's interesting because one of the things that abductions can be is your spirit guides or your higher self or your galactic connections giving you an upgrade. It could be upgrading your body or just checking in that way. And they can make themselves appear a different way if they think if it's going to help your interaction with them and not cause too much fear or anxiety or
yeah, 100%.
disrupt the vibration.
Because I guess at that point, like I said, I've always been very detached from space. Like I remember learning about space in primary school and just sort of being like, oh, it's too much. Like I don't want to know anything about space, or I don't even want to question. Like, and I just think that I just wasn't ready for that. And yeah,
Yes.
that all changed in Egypt. It was very much, there was a lots of conversations around, and then of course, like there was a channeling in our class. So
Right. There was.
and we were all like activated together within the class. So
So I wanted to ask you, have you, since that abduction, have you felt into that at all or done any work around trying to connect with what happened?
I haven't, I don't think I really have recently. And I think we've talked about that since then, and since Egypt, I've been more open to that and open to
Yeah.
that communication and connection. So I've definitely had maybe 2 or 3 other experiences. And again, they're kind of like, I go to sleep and, but I sort of more go into it with permission. And it's
Hmm.
like, if anyone wants to make contact with me, I'm open to that tonight. And I've definitely seen visuals. And whether it feels like a dream or whether it feels like I'm in that theta state, like just before I fall asleep, or, you know, that theta state, and I feel like I can feel something or see something in my actual bedroom.
Right.
But as you know, like every time I tell you something like that, you're like, what did it look like? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. It just, I'm more focused on what the energy felt like rather
Right.
than the
Yeah.
visual.
Yeah.
So yes, it's definitely like I said, I'm learning so much from you and Michelle on all of this, because otherwise I have no idea.
And you can set the intention before you go to bed to wanting to connect in that way and asking for clarity on it and to bring it back with you. Like asking your guides, asking your higher self, whatever that may be. Definitely try to play around with that intention setting before bed.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
even if you have a journaling practice, I've found that using that as a tool to connect and retain memories or uncover memories, that's been pretty beneficial for me.
Yeah,
That's
for
something you can
sure.
play with too. Just, see what comes out.
Yeah.
Or channeling, since you're able to channel pretty easily.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my channeling abilities are nothing on Michelle's, and I am getting Michelle on to an episode on the podcast in a few episodes' time.
Wonderful.
But also in Egypt, another thing that we were taught was there was a few people within our class, and then somebody within our beautiful fairy family who taught us how to see, like, how would you describe it? How to see or communicate with like UFOs or beings in the sky? Is there a
Mm-hmm.
way that you can explain that better than me?
But yeah, connecting with your, I would say that what we were connecting with were beings that knew us, that were connected to us. Those are usually the ones that are going to show themselves to you. And so she was saying, look around the moon and look at the stars around the moon, and they like to hide as a star, because many of these ships they just appear as a star, a light that you can't see details. It's so far away, so it looks like a star, and they'll hang out in clusters and actually pretend to be a constellation. So she was saying, focus on them, and I think she said something about calling out to the extraterrestrial or extra dimensional or however you want to call it, calling out to them, opening yourself up to them, and honing in on one of those stars. And you'll, if it is one of these beings or a ship, it would start like wiggling and moving around. And you're going to get feedback in your own intuition if there's a connection happening, which we were all getting that kind of those kind of clarifications. But I think you even had an experience where the actual star disappeared. Is that right?
Yeah, so what happened is when we were on, we spent most of our nights in Egypt on the roof, like a rooftop restaurant, and looking up at the stars. And as our friend Sky was explaining how to do it, I was just looking up at the stars, and there was definitely one that caught my attention. And what happened is it actually like lit up. So it went from being this small star to just like lighting up, like, if you can imagine a star's like this, and then it just goes, and then it just disappeared. And I was like, oh my God, I just saw it. It was so
So
exciting.
we call that a power up.
Right.
And they do that to communicate back with us. Power up.
Yeah, so I've been looking out for that ever since, and then it finally happened again just the other night. So yeah, I definitely recommend anybody, switch your TV off, get outside at night, and just look up at the sky.
Yeah, not enough people look at the sky. We
No.
kind of take it for granted, don't we?
Yes, everyone's looking down at their phones or just watching TV, whereas you have a whole universe of entertainment right at your back door.
Netflix has nothing on the sky.
So one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on the podcast is I have never, so you've talked a little bit about opening up yourself as a channel, and we haven't exactly explained channeling. So I don't know if you want to explain that briefly for anybody who has no idea what we're talking about at all when we talk about channeling, for one? Do you have a good definition?
Let's see. I don't know if I do have a good definition. Well, channeling is something that we all do daily. I mean, we are, and this might trigger people with belief systems, but from my understanding, we are not our human body. We are something beyond our human body. Our human body is just containing a small aspect of our larger self. So in that sense, we are always channeling that higher part of ourselves. And it's coming through a filter, which we call the ego. So this little ego filter is filtering out that channel that's happening. So the more work we do on ourselves with our ego, taming our ego, calming our inner thoughts, working on our shadows, doing all the integration work, it's helping us to create a clearer channel, basically.
Yes. So we can channel our higher selves, we can channel our guides, we can channel by automatic writing, we can open, like, so the way that people would describe Michelle's channeling is like fully embodying the beings or the spirits that she's working with.
Right.
Yeah. And there's so much more to that. That's definitely a little just.
I think she would call herself a conscious channel.
Yes.
Because she's always aware of everything that's happening. And I'm not sure how she experiences it, but I know she's very present as the channel's happening. At any moment, she can pop out and pop back in.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Whereas when I channel, I have to rewatch it because I have no idea what. So I record it and I'm like, what happened? And then I'll learn things, and Michelle's doing the same thing. She like, this is not information that she's stored somewhere. It's like a.
No, and I'm sure she'll get into all this with you, but I know she's been guided to not look at certain channelers' works to keep that pure.
Yeah, a clear channel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I think that's my downfall because I've done too much research at this point.
That's a good point. So there's this
infiltrated.
Yeah, stronger level of questioning something, especially if information came through and it conflicted with something that you've read or watched or something like that.
But I think it has helped my channeling because in my case, the channeling is more coming in the form of questions. And because of all the research I've done, I think it gives me a good foundation to ask questions from. But Many times the questions that are coming to me are not from me completely.
Yeah, and so that's what I was going to get into is this amazing ability that you have to channel questions, which I think, for one, as a QHHT practitioner, because there are literally thousands of QHHT practitioners all over the world, right. And the training that we receive is definitely amazing, but Dolores always says it's all about the questions, and yet you kind of can't be trained how to ask questions. So the fact that you've got this amazing ability to channel the questions is super incredible. So if you're able to get into that a little bit, maybe talk about like how you're able to do that, if that's something that we can tap into.
Okay. I do think everyone can do that because it does come down to having a clear channel, having done that inner work and getting into a state of flow. Because I think that's kind of what happens is I'm in a flow state and I'm also setting an intention. So when it comes to QHHT, I'm setting an intention before the session happens that I'm here to hold space for this person that's coming in here to have this experience. Because it's them having the experience. I'm not doing the healing for them. I'm just holding the space for them. So the intent is very important. And I strongly believe in being an advocate for the client and making sure they get the most out of the session. So strongly. So I think just that really strong intention and then being in the flow state and having done inner work and being able to be as egoless as possible in that situation, because you have to allow them to be vulnerable. And if you're showing signs of having a strong ego, they're not going to feel safe to be vulnerable. So I think when all those things kind of line up, the questions are they're floating there for me to grab. They kind of fall into place. I don't know. There's no trying or pushing or seeking. I'm not reaching for them. There's just an allowing, really. So it comes down to, I think, being in the moment, being in that present moment, being there with that client, or whatever the scenario is for that person that's looking to ask questions. Just being in that present moment and being as much in a flow state as possible. Just no pushing, no resisting. Because the more you push against it, the more resistance you're going to get back. And I'm going to be spinning my wheels trying to come up with questions and just burning time. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. It's not quite possible to channel without being in that flow state. So if you're overthinking, then you're going to, not be in that flow state and not allow those natural questions to come through. And I guess hearing from different people's experiences with QHHT, yes, they might come to their session with a list of questions. And of course, as a practitioner, you want to make sure that they've got all those questions answered. But then it's interesting with a lot of people's SCs, they kind of give you a little bit, and then you actually need to dig a little bit more and say, oh yeah, tell us a bit more about that. Right. Rather than just getting that surface answer. So, and I think having the list of questions can make you sort of overthink in a way. And I've definitely experienced that within my QHHT sessions that I've done for people, as well as different interview experiences. Is I've got my question sitting here, but I also, if I'm focused on what question I'm going to ask next, I'm going to miss very important stuff in the moment. So.
Right. And don't be afraid to get creative with the questions, because sometimes you got to sneakily work around the SC.
Yes.
I've had to trick them sometimes to give a healing, like a physical healing, because they were so adamant that no, we can't do that.
Yeah.
For one example, I just could not get the SC to give this person a healing. They just wouldn't do it. No, he's not ready. He can't have it. So I said something on the line of, can we show him how to do this himself? Can we show him what to do and what that would look like? And then they just started doing it. And what needed to be healed was healed by showing him how to heal it.
Yeah, it's so amazing, because I've definitely had a few sessions where the SC has stated that no healing was possible. So it is really interesting how some people can be a bit stubborn. And even myself, even looking back to past healings that I've experienced, I remember once I was getting this forensic healing. And she's doing this healing and she's going, oh, there's so much that needs to be healed. And in my mind, I could hear myself even being like, yep, and I'm not going to let you do it. I felt that within me, that I was holding on to it. And that's all it is, isn't it? That they're just holding on to that. I don't know what you'd explain it, that trauma, or that just keeping themselves back, really.
Well, yeah. And it could be an identity thing.
Yes.
Because if you identify with that trauma, well, the prospect of letting go of it could mean, who are you now? I don't know who I am if I let go of that. So that might be part of the mechanism that's holding on to that thing in that moment.
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah, probably a bit of a story of my life there with that victim identity. I
think we all swim in those waters every once in a while.
Yeah.
The victim waters.
Yes, it's I don't know what it is about the victim. It's it's not a nice place to be in, but it's definitely, I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's definitely something that I have gone through within my life. And you know, even just received a healing the other day, and, you know, still letting go of that victim, like, I don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
So it's interesting the time that we're being presented with at the moment. You know, we went from like meeting each other in Egypt and being like, oh, what an amazing time to meet. Like, out of all the lifetimes that we've shared together, like, this is going to be great because we can just quite easily jump on a plane and visit each other. And then global lockdown. So that's been super interesting. And I guess in this time more than ever, it's been so apparent how important it is to question everything that we receive. So I guess I want to switch that questioning, you know, that ability to question things in that scenario. So for everyday people, you know, how can we, like, I guess there's a conditioning that's been happened within school, and even especially if you've come from that religious background. I know that I used to go to like Sunday school and different things like that, and I remember going through sections of the Bible, and they would say, like, this is the way it is, and I would say, but why? And the nun that was teaching me was just like, it just is, we don't question it, you know. So like, for those people that have had lots and lots of those experiences, lots of that conditioning, do not question, you know, especially, you know, this person knows more than you, this person is the expert, this is a doctor, or, you know, like, don't question them. So what do you say to all of that? What can we do to be able to question the life and the experiences that we're being presented with, especially right now?
Well, I like to look at it like giving my power away. If I'm not questioning and taking things at face value, I am powerless. And I very much want to stand in my power and know I have control of my own life. And that has led me to question everything. And I think it's healthy to question things and just look at things logical and take a step back and look at it objectively, if it makes sense objectively, because so much in our society does not make sense. But if someone is not able to do that, I know when people live a really, really busy life and they get caught up in the life game, all the different mundane tasks that you get caught up in, and you don't have any time for yourself to sit still and quiet your mind and think. Because I know people like that. And they tell me they feel safer knowing that they don't have to question things, and they just trust the people in power and trust the systems in place. And they feel security in that. And for them, maybe that's okay. Everyone is on their own path of awakening, and it happens when it's supposed to happen for them. So I don't know what I could tell them.
Well, I guess I feel like it's part of that spiritual journey is waking up and starting to question things. Actually, like, yeah, that's 100% it. If you are on the spiritual journey, it is completely essential to question everything. So, you know, I was talking to you about the Celestian prophecy, and I want to do a whole episode on that. But that's actually the first insight, is to realize that what we've been presented with may not be everything. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like how we were talking about that question with the subconscious, you know, when they give you a little bit and you say, oh, tell me more about that. Like, just simply doing that is that's part of our spiritual journey, is learning that this is a human experience and that we are spiritual beings, and there's more to that. So absolutely. So, and I guess like something that's sort of coming to mind for me is when you're presented with those circumstances, and especially like media is a hot topic at the moment, different things that are being shown on the media, and you can go back over on different or particular topics. And one thing that is common within the mainstream media is they'll say, you don't need to question this. You don't need to look anywhere else. We're going to give you everything that you need to know. You don't need to do your own research. Like that's an alarm bell right there.
Big one. Or when something is posted that's new, something comes to light that's new, and within 10 minutes, it's been fact checked by a fact checker.
Mm-hmm.
Where and even it's literally impossible to have done the research to fact check that within the time it was posted.
Yeah. Yeah. Even these fact checkers, we could do a whole topic on that. Like, so much going on. Yeah.
But during this lockdown, I have seen so many people that were kind of stuck in that mode of not questioning and trusting, beginning to look at things and question, and it's amazing.
It is.
So many people in my circle that I've seen it, my own family, I love it. Yeah. And that has gotten them kickstarted on their awakening path.
Exactly.
And a major catalyst.
Yeah, because it's something that's so natural as a child. You know, they ask all the questions, and it's almost hilarious, the questions that come through. You know, what does that say? That little saying, out of the mouths of babes. They're so funny. And then something happens in their life, like my little story there with, you know, doing Sunday school and questioning parts of it and wanting to know more. Like I'm like, I don't understand and I want to understand it. And I guess, you know, we're the same in that area of that. We just naturally question things, and we just naturally couldn't take that original answer. It's like, I just want to know more about that. Actually, I want to know everything. So
I'm just trying to cram so much information.
Yeah.
It does become a problem though, because I have a problem integrating all of the things that I'm researching, and they get kind of lost in the jumbled mess of info.
Yeah, and I've even read research on, you know, apparently the more you know, the more likely you are to have experiences with depression or mental health issues. Like there's definitely, like it feels like there's almost a level, and I've definitely had that experience. Is like I'll look into something and then like realize I'm like, oh wow, this isn't great at all. Like there's a whole lot of things happening in this world that isn't awesome. And so there's definitely this belief that if you're naive, you're going to be more happy, but if you're not empowered, then what's the whole point in all of this, right?
Right. Yeah, that is tricky, because I do have friends and different people I know that they're more on that naive side, but they are super happy.
So if that works for them.
Do I burst their bubble or not?
Oh, God. Yeah.
No, I don't. No. Let them be happy.
Yeah. But for anyone who wants to question things, we definitely support you in that. And I definitely enjoy my life more knowing the things that I know to be true. And even that, like, you know, sometimes the question is actually your intuition just saying something's not quite right here. So one thing that I, in a way, I didn't expect with Egypt, but then at the same time I kind of did, because as you know, as soon as I booked in Egypt, I got visuals of meeting you, and as well as meeting Michelle. And with Michelle in particular, I knew that she was connected to the fairies. But one thing that I didn't expect was actually meeting a whole group of people that was connected to the fairies, and like creating our little fairy family over in Egypt.
How magical is that?
Like the most random thing for a bunch of fairies to come together in Egypt. Like, what a random place to meet, you know?
And that would have been the last thing I expected, was to know I'm connected to the fairy realm.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, so if you wanted to share some of your experiences around what you've discovered within the fairy realm, or your fairy past lives that you would like to share.
I haven't really discovered too much about the fairy lives. But working with the fae, they've really opened me up to the magic, that, you know, their magic as well as just my magic in general, and that's been wonderful. And I've been kind of conjuring them by putting up different little fairies in my house and making fairy doors. And through Michelle's channeling, they taught me how to create a fairy wand and have a ceremony around it. And so I have a fairy wand that I use and I'll dance with. And just, yeah, their energy is so fun to be with. And it makes so much sense to me now looking back at my life, because I'm a Gemini, so I'm this really flowy air sign, and I'm always in the woods and I'm climbing trees, and I love plants, and I love gardens and flowers, and it all makes sense now, learning of my connections to the Fae. And it's really strengthened that and changed my experience with gardening and just being in my yard and being in the woods. And I'm having this open dialogue whenever I go hiking, talking with the Fae, talking with the plants, talking with the trees. But I did find that a connection I have is actually a guide or a council. It's a collective in the Fae. It's a council, and they call themselves, or we call ourselves, the Council of Joy. Right. And they're one of my main guides.
I haven't heard about them, because I was going to ask you. So you mentioned in your QHHT session in Egypt that you started channeling, and you were actually channeling the Fairy Collective. And yes, obviously you're very connected with the Fairy Collective. I didn't even know that there was a whole collective. Like, there was so much that I learned about the fairies in Egypt. So tell us, did you want to share more about this other, what is it, the Council of Joy? Council of Joy.
Yeah, so that's one of my guides, is this Council of Joy. And at first, it took a while for me to hone in on what that was, because I think you've even like tried feeling into my guides, and you're like, I don't know how many you have. Sometimes there's this many, and sometimes there's more, and they're coming and going. And that's how I see them. They're everywhere. There's so many, and then I'm like, we have to shrink it down, and I have to focus on one. So I see them as one now, but they represent the Council of Joy when I see the one.
Wow. That's so special.
I think just having, I don't know, it makes sense. Just the disposition I have towards life in general, that I'm part of this Council of Joy, because I do resonate with that strongly. And just being that light of joy in I don't know, as many situations as I can be in. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes it's not there.
Well, I've definitely never seen you as a Debbie Downer, which is why it's been very inspiring. Like, gosh, she's so happy, even though the whole of Earth is like going up in flames.
I'm just dancing with the Council of Joy over here, in circles. Yeah.
Makes sense.
I don't know. I hope that doesn't come off like I'm, I don't know, in my own little world.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. I think, to especially have that type of energy as a guide, I do believe that, we're all here for different purposes. We all have different roles. There are people playing the role of the bad guy right now in the 3D Earth. There's the people like me, which is, I can definitely resonate with that darkness. Like, I'm okay in that space, which is good for those people that are really in that darkened space. And then there's people like you that are just up here, and they're like, life is good, it's all good. Like, we're gonna be fine.
Is I am not afraid to go into the dark spaces. I've done a lot of deep dives into the dark research. I'm not afraid to go there at all. I feel very comfortable there too. But I don't know, just the natural tendency is to go high.
Yeah. No, there's nothing
but
wrong
it
with
does
that.
help seeing from all the perspectives. and seeing, you know, the story playing out and the polarity and duality that's here. Not getting attached to it, not getting caught up in the stories. I think that's what's helped me kind of, not attached too strongly one way or the other.
Yeah. And even like I know that it's been really helpful and beneficial for me to have, you know, people like you in my life where I have been very much in that dark space. And then it's almost like, you know, you're holding the light for me as I'm holding the light for others. It's really, yeah.
I love that.
Mm.
Here to hold the light.
So let's talk a little bit more about past lives. Can you share any experiences that you've had exploring your own past lives? So, because as you mentioned, you've done a few quantum healing sessions. You've also explored your Akashic records. So what is something that has improved your life from exploring your past lives? Does that make sense?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Well, initially it helped realign me with my spiritual practices that had fallen away. And I mean, that in itself was amazing to have that come back without needing a substance, outside substance, and experiencing it myself. And that really empowered me. Having that experience come from me and not the practitioner, not a substance, whatever. It came from me. So that was really empowering. And it gave me the experiences I had in that first past life regression. It gave me the courage to eventually quit my full-time job and really pursue my true passions of helping others heal and helping others heal themselves, really. And holding that sacred space and learning that was my true calling. Because looking back, there'd be like little conversations I'd have with people and they would drop something to me. And it'd be just a breadcrumb, a little puzzle piece. And I had someone say that to me, that my ability to listen and be present with someone telling me something, because people would just randomly tell me their life stories all the time. It happened. I mean, this is consistent with most QHHT practitioners. But yeah, they would tell me their life stories. And I never put that together. Yeah, right. Yeah. But I had one conversation with a person that was like, this is healing. You're a healer. Because I was adamant that I was not a healer. Adamant. I'm not a healer. That's not what I'm doing. That's not what I'm meant to do. And just hearing that perspective from that person, because they experienced healing from me just listening to them. And this was way before QHHT for me. So I didn't put the piece together until my past life regression. And it all just clicked. But it also helped me get out of my comfort zone and push myself to create the YouTube channel. Because I could always see it in my mind's eye, and me being out in like the public eye like that, I could see it happening, but I was so resistant to it. I pushed against it. Didn't have the courage yet. But the past life regression really, really helped in that way.
Yeah, amazing. Those are some very profound things that you've gotten out of just exploring your past lives. Because I've always really recommended that people explore their past lives, especially once you're going down that spiritual path and you're doing all this work and there's still something. You're just like, I feel like I've done all the healing in my life and the experiences that I've had. And then you're like, oh yeah, I've had a whole bunch of other lives that probably need to be connected to this one. So, and of course, like I feel like that I'm completely aligned with your answer there. One thing that so the first time that I did the Akashic records, I actually got a snippet of nearly all, we've probably had like hundreds and thousands of past lives, but I actually explored like 10 lives very briefly in a meditative state, and basically just like the end of my lives. So I got to meditate and witness all my deaths, which was pretty cool. No. But actually something that I realized in getting a snippet of all of those past lives was that in every single one, I was some kind of a healer. And in this lifetime, I also didn't really resonate with that healer. I'd never been really interested in doing energy work or Reiki healing or anything like that. And then, you know, of course, working in mental health, people tell you things and you're just that safe person. And that's all QHHT is just a safe person to that holds space for somebody while they do all the work. It's so amazing.
I kind of see a QHHT practitioner as a shaman. There's a consistency there with the two, where you're guiding. You're this guide in the astral realm. You're able to have a foot in and out.
Yeah. And even like the more I'm learning about shamans is it very much fits in with the fairies as well, and what the fairies' role within ourselves is very much that guide and that guide around joy and play and yeah.
Many shamans work with the fae.
Yeah, of course they do.
Which I've just discovered. Because when I first started my journey and I found my awakening through psychedelics, that was leading me to the shaman route. And I was like, oh, shamanism, that's interesting. I could see myself being a shaman and working with like plant medicines that way. And it's so funny how it's taking me to this route, but there's this parallel with the two.
Yeah, amazing. So I'd love to talk a bit more about the ego, because it's something that's been mentioned a few times in your responses, and we've definitely had some very interesting conversations on your take of the ego. So would you be able to explain a bit about that, about the ego, the role, and yeah, sort of the role that the ego plays?
Well, we kind of talked about us being this human container holding a very small part of our larger self. That's spiritual, that's energy. So this ego, I see it as this mechanism that's necessary while we're in the earth plane, this 3D realm. Because when we came in with the agreement of forgetting our godliness and our connection to source. So we needed a mechanism in place. And it's meant to protect us. And this is how I see it. It's meant to protect us from all the ways that we've been hurt throughout all the many lifetimes that we've lived and all the many lifetimes that our ancestors have lived. Because when we come in through a DNA lineage. We're not just picking up from where we left off, we're picking up from where all of our ancestors left off. And so the ego plays into all of that. And it's working with all that energy. But it really has our best interest in mind. It's coming from a 3D perspective and not the grander perspective. So it can be a great ally and a great tool once you understand that. And I don't really resonate with the idea of killing the ego. I did come across that when I was going through my different routes of Buddhism and things and having an ego death. And I think that ego death was different. Now I look at it, it was different than killing the ego. It was just for me to experience it dying and then being reborn. Because every time something dies, something's reborn. So it's more just learning how to work with the ego and allowing it to be an ally for you. Not letting it control the show. Because it wants to control the show.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess the concept of the ego was definitely a very important aspect during my my more full-on awakening time, which was just after I had my son. Mm-hmm. And I spent months, maybe even a good year or more, of just really unpacking the ego, going into all of the Dr. Wayne Dyer aspects of the ego. And I really, what what I understood of that at that point was that it was about releasing the ego, and the death of the ego. And then Egypt, of course, changed that. Because it sort of came up within, we all got psychic readings in Egypt, and I remember mine didn't quite resonate. And then later, while I was doing a QHHT session on someone else, you were all channeling the mantis beings, which that was recorded. I'd love yeah, and I definitely recommend, I'm going to link in your YouTube channel for people to check out, Michelle channeling the mantis beings, because they are just amazing energies to be around. And you can feel it even from a recording, or especially when she's doing like a live channeling, you can feel the energy coming through your computer. It's like amazing.
Yes. In Egypt, that was my first experience with the mantis beings.
Yeah.
And holy cow. But that directly led to me discovering my own mantis guide and my own connections to the mantises.
Yeah.
I don't know how you say that. Mantoids?
I don't know. But I do remember that you actually asked the mantis beings why my psychic reading didn't quite resonate with me. And the response was that it was ego. And I was like, what? I don't have any ego. Like, I've been working on getting rid of that shit for ages. Like, and then hello, ego. So, yeah, so it's actually not something that we can get rid of. And that's not the purpose in this spiritual journey, is not trying to get rid of the ego. So every time we feel it, there's a purpose there, and just really unpacking, what the message is for the ego.
I'm so happy that it happened for you and you were able to really discover that. Because I was thinking that when I listened back to that, and I didn't want to say anything to you because I want you to find it yourself. And it sounds like you did.
Yeah. Because even I think we were discussing it like later on. Oh, that's right. Because I actually didn't get to listen to the messages until I was, back home. And yeah, it was definitely like, I think anytime you're triggered, that's a message from your ego.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a reason for it, and there's something that you can unpack there. So I do really think that it's a bit of an ally, like an underrated ally in the spiritual community.
Yep.
Yeah. And
even
I do
agree, when you get triggered by something, it's a great opportunity to experience a growth moment and integrate something.
Yeah. And even like being presented with other people's egos. Like you're just like, oh, that's your ego. I don't want to talk to your ego. But then, there's probably something in the person that's receiving that response from the ego as well. Like I do believe that everything sort of means something, and we can unpack, and every situation can come from a place of learning a lesson there.
Yeah, absolutely. I see everyone around us and everything in the outside world being our mirror, being a mirror for us, reflecting back what we need to see, because it's reflecting back what we're projecting out of our own self. So absolutely, everybody you interact with, there's a chance to grow, chance to learn something.
So another example of like terminology that I've loved your thoughts on is actually the term conspiracy theory. Now I know this has sort of gone a little bit out of track, but I know it's a big, a big topic at the moment, as like this is the Great Awakening, and there is people that this is all new to them, and to be labeled a conspiracy theorist, like it's so tell me, what is your so you taught me like who made that term up, so if you want to share that.
Did I don't remember that.
Really? Do you not remember the conversation?
Did I say it was the CIA?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
If you'd like to share that.
That makes sense why you asked the question now. So there are people on the internet trying to debunk that, of course. But from my understanding, it was created by them back in like the late 60s, 67-ish. And it was a term created to discredit anyone who dared to challenge the official version of their truth. But I just came across, are you familiar with BuzzFeed?
Yes.
Yeah, so they just put out a new article rebranding that term, specifically with the Q people, related to the Q people, calling them a collective delusion. But really, the term conspiracy theory, like, I wear that as a badge of honor at this point. That used to trigger me. It definitely used to trigger me. But now it's just, I'm like, there's been so many things that have validated and vindicated all the things that us conspiracy theorists have talked about for ages. So at this point, if you call someone a conspiracy theorist, it's more just revealing your own ignorance.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess there's definitely a lot recently that is new for me. And there's some things that I guess I was exposed to a couple of years ago, but I didn't go down that rabbit hole. I just sort of was like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. And especially when you've spent your whole life questioning everything, of course you're going to like go down those. And there's definitely some like, what you'd call conspiracy theories that don't feel like truth to me. Right. And even just that whole, like, what is truth in general, there's a whole topic of conversation that we can have on that, because my truth might be different to yours.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting about that, I mean, that can be its own episode because just real quick, an anecdote about a channeling I came across. I don't know if you're familiar with Rob Gauthier.
Nope.
Channels Ardith, and
we can definitely, if you want to send me a whole bunch of links to anything that you remember you've mentioned, and we'll put that all in the show notes for anyone who wants to go deeper.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, he was channeling about the flat Earth and that flat Earth theory. And because there's so many people that believe in that. But it comes down to what's true for you, because we're all co-creating and creating our own realities. So if enough people believe, basically the channeler was saying, if enough people believe that, and they traveled to the end of the planet, like they would come to that, whatever they suspect they're going to find, that ice shelf or whatever, like that would happen for them. In their reality, that would happen for them. So yes, what is true?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the sort of the basis of all things that are true is that we are creating this world. And I think part of it that I like to sort of talk about is a lot of the things that we aren't questioning is actually just a big fat illusion. So unless you do start questioning things, especially things that are taught in school and these common known things that like everyone just thinks is true, and then you actually look at the background and you're like, oh, how could that be true, really? So
well, the thing is, your higher self, the bigger part of yourself, it knows truth. It's inherent. So the more work that we do in ourselves and allowing that channel to clear and channeling our true essence, the more we can trust our intuition and know truth for ourselves.
100%. So now, just tying things up, what is your number one spiritual practice that you always come back to? Like whether it's something that you do every day or something that you just come back to every time because it works for you.
So I had trouble narrowing this down to one.
That's okay. You can share a couple if you want.
I would say the very most important one to me is I call them my morning pages, and it's my journaling in the morning. I don't know if you want me to get into what that looks like.
If you want to. I guess I haven't really covered you know, what are spiritual practices, you know, why do we do them and that sort of thing. But I do know that most people would know there's a whole bunch of things that we could do. You know, you could spend a good couple of hours doing all the spiritual practices. So I guess it's more about like what works for you and why.
Right. And so the morning pages, that was the very first one I got into in my awakening. And the way I was instructed to do it is there's really no rules around it. And that's the important part. It's like to keep it very fluid. But it would be very early in the morning, and you sit down, and it was proposed to me to be 3 pages, but it's really, if it's a page for you, whatever it is, whatever works for you, you want it to work for you. You don't want it to be something that you like you have resistance to doing. It's supposed to be as easy as possible. But the main goal of it is to just empty your mind. So you just like free flow consciousness, write anything, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. You don't let yourself judge what you're writing, but you can, you know, let the emotions pour out too. If you're angry, be angry, but don't judge yourself. Just like let it come out, let it flow out. That's how it started for me. And it just completely empties all that clutter in your mind and helps you throughout the rest of the day to not have that and have clarity. And it's kind of evolved for me where now I'm using it. I use it in that way still, but I'm also using it to express gratitude and really anchor me into the present moment. And it's been basically my way of channeling now. Channeling my higher self and channeling different guides and different energies that are trying to communicate with me. It'll happen in my journaling because I'm clearing that clutter and that channel is being cleared and they're able to come through.
Yeah, beautiful. Some people refer to that as like a brain dump or and even like it's called Miracle Mornings, is it? Is that what you got it from?
I got it from The Artist's Way.
Oh, yes. I haven't read that yet. That's been on my list for ages. But the Miracle Mornings is like a list of things that if you do every morning, then it sort of sets you up for your day. And it's kind of like, you know, to write, so a brain dump of some sort, to read, to move your body. What was the other ones? There's more, but I can't remember. But
yeah.
Anything else that you want to?
It's so valuable to me.
Yeah.
Just working through where I'm going, and it's not really as much a brain dump anymore. It's more expressing the gratitude and connecting with my higher self and my guides.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to mention in that? Spiritual practices?
Meditation and dancing. Those 3 things right there.
Yeah.
That's the trio. That's the trio.
Yeah, beautiful. And even that, Trinity. Like, so many people don't even think of something like dance to be a spiritual practice.
I didn't until Egypt.
Really?
Well, I guess that's not true. I guess that QHHT, the level 1 class, that kind of got me thinking that way because we would dance every morning before class started to raise the vibration.
I know. I love that.
And
that
I
was
love dancing. I love moving my body. I love dancing.
Yeah.
I just never knew what it was doing. I never knew how to actually use it to my benefit.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite things because I did my level 1 online because Australia and all. But to go in person and to start your class just by, it was just the best. It just, and that's generally how I start my day is I just put some music on. So I don't really like get dressed to look good because you cover looking good in the Landmark Forum, which I always go on about. And again, I'm going to do a whole podcast episode on that. But so I don't worry about looking good anymore, which came up in Egypt as well. I was like, do I look silly? Like, why are these people wanting photos with me?
About how you feel.
Exactly. I'd put on music and the music would sort of relate to how I'm feeling and I'd just move my body. And if I felt good and comfortable, and then that's what I'd wear.
Okay.
So, what is one thing that has helped you on your spiritual journey? So, this could be a healing, it could be a book, a quote, anything at all that was like a real like catalyst for your spiritual journey.
So I mentioned it earlier, but I'll mention it again. It was that book by Ram Dass, Be Here Now. And there was a quote that still sticks with me and still resonates, even as I'm understanding more and connecting with these different energies. It just brings all these pieces together for me. And the quote is, "We're all just walking each other home." So simple.
That's beautiful.
And that resonates so strongly with me.
I'll have to add it to my list of books to read.
Highly recommend it.
Beautiful. So how can anyone connect with you? We also haven't mentioned where you're located, because you do in-person QHHT sessions. So where are you located for that? And what's the best way that people can connect with you to possibly work with you or just follow along with your journey if they've loved what they've heard today?
Well, right now I'm in Dubuque, Iowa in the States. And sooner than later, hopefully in the next month, I'm going to be offering hypnosis online.
Awesome.
But as of right now, that's still in the works. But the best way to connect with me is through my YouTube channel, Channels of the Galaxy. And then my Instagram, Uncle Z Alchemy. Those are the two best ways. I also have a Facebook, Z George. Trying to get better at using that.
I think Facebook's going down anyway, so
It's going down.
Yeah, we're all moving off Facebook. But yeah, I will definitely link all of those, your YouTube channel, your Instagram, and if you want your Facebook on there as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That'd be
an honor to be here with you. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Yeah, thank you for making this time. It's been great. I don't want it to end.
Right? We need the fairy like temporal bubble.
Yeah. I know. We should have like played with time. So, oh, man. Could have made this a whole lot longer than what. But yeah, I'm so glad we got to cover all the questions, and it's been wonderful. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Wow, what a great episode. I really enjoyed interviewing my good friend Z. It was such a joy to feel his joy, and I hope that you guys felt that as well, and I'm sure there was many, many golden nuggets in there for you. And so many things that we'll link in the show notes, the different things that he shared, and still more for me to learn as well. Like, I'm excited. So that's just great. And I really love interviewing people. The next few episodes over the next coming weeks, I definitely am going to be interviewing more and more people. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on every episode, and especially this one with Z. If you would like to head over to my Instagram, Spiritual AF the podcast, and just drop a comment or send me a message and let me know what you thought about that. What are you getting out of this podcast? I love to hear from you. Don't forget to follow this podcast for more interdimensional conversations on all things life, death, and everything in between. And don't forget, if your wings have been clipped off, they can always regrow.